Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is scheduled for one network and is your main event. Backstage in the ring, your favorite pros are sitting down to talk with the Watt and Maestro. So grab a seat, relax, and listen to some wrestling chat. Ref, let's ring that bell. We got someone who's gonna hit the mat.
Welcome to another episode of Hitting the Mat, the podcast. I'm your host, the Kilowatt, along with my co-host, the Maestro. What's up, Maestro?
Not much, man. You know, another week in the times. So, you know, just making it through, man.
The times of the COVID times.
Yep.
Oh, we're getting through it. Slowly but surely. Tonight, to kind of distract from the COVID times, we've got the promoter of NYCW, Johnny Patches, on the line. How's it going, man?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. So
excellent.
How is the quarantine and such treating you up there in New York, right?
Yep, I'm in upstate New York. We are in the first county that is set to be reopened because we've had pretty low numbers as far as COVID outbreaks go. Mm-hmm. But I've been working straight through. I guess I'm considered essential. Okay. So I get up, I go to work, I come home and sleep. And that's what it's been for a good 2.5 months now, and it's pretty miserable.
Wow. I'm on the exact opposite of that spectrum, and it's also miserable.
There's no winning.
It's really not.
Pretty much.
Oh man. So what do you promote in the same county that you live in, or?
Yeah, I promote in my hometown. I live in the suburbs of Utica. We're about 45 minutes outside of Syracuse, an hour and a half from Albany, in a town called Whitesboro. So in the surrounding areas here is where I've kept my feet grounded for now.
Alrighty.
All right. So I mean, we can just get things going, starting right from the beginning. So this is even before we get into your career in wrestling. But what was Johnny like as a kid? Like, where are you? Like, are you from New York? Did you grow up in New York, around that area? Just kind of what was your childhood like?
Yep, born and raised. This is my hometown, so I definitely have strong ties here. Been a lifelong wrestling fan. I can remember the first match I ever watched. I can't tell you what I did yesterday, though. Wrestling is something I've definitely gravitated towards, and I've never looked back. It's been part of my life as far back as I can remember.
So when did you start to get into wrestling? Like what you were saying, like the first match. What was that first match?
It was King Kong Bundy versus Tony Gurria. I was crying because I didn't want to watch it. My grandmother wanted to. I wanted to watch Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And when I got done crying, I had to think to my 4-year-old self, well, this is pretty cool. And from that point forward, I was hooked. I used to watch with my grandmother all the time and just never stopped. It just became so ingrained in my life from a young age.
So, lifelong wrestling fan, but as far as like when you were in school, like what other activities or did you have any other interests besides wrestling that you participated in?
Well, I'm 42. I just turned 42 last month. So, growing up, I was there with the Atari as my first system and Nintendo. And I grew up with, the evolution of technology. So really staying current with video games and playing sports, in the backyards with the friends. I never was really big into organized sports. My family always focused on schoolwork should come first, You're never going to make it playing football. You're never going to make it playing basketball. Focus on school. So I casually did. I wasn't, a dedicated student. I did enough to get by and to graduate without any issues, but it was never anything that I really cared about. I went to college for a little bit, just wasn't for me. I wanted to get into the real world. I wanted to see how everything else developed, not just what was told to me or what was fed to me from, teachers or professors and things like that.
So what did you start going to college for?
Speech communication, only because I didn't have a radio and TV communications program where I had gone, which was Utica College, which was an extension of Syracuse University. That was back in 97. Yeah, back in 97.
Okay. So it seems like you were interested in sort of like the broadcast, like either like what kind of radio, TV kind of, was it journalism or more kind of like the announcing?
It was more radio at the time. I was big into music, in my teens. I DJ'd at the local college station. I did that for a while. I interned at our major rock station. After interning for a summer, I realized that there was no money to be made at radio and that it wasn't as glamorous as it seemed to be. And I just kind of meandered through life, basically, up until a couple years ago.
Sounds very similar to my story.
I think a lot of us are usually in the same boat until we realize, hey, you got to do it. You got to, to quote Clerks, you got to shit or get off the pot. Absolutely. And things just, all the stars seemed to align for me taking the next step.
So was wrestling always something you were looking to get into, like even as a kid, or like when you were like in college and you decided college wasn't your thing? Was wrestling always something you wanted to get into but kind of didn't know how to?
Wrestling was always going to be part of my life. When you talk to a kid, like, what do you want to be? Like, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a pro wrestler. At the end of the day, I missed that boat. Time caught up with me. I got time and weight caught up with me. I got too fat. I got too out of shape. And just becoming an actual, athlete was out of the question. But my mind has always been wrapped around pro wrestling. So I was able to use that to get to where we are.
Okay. So before we get into kind of like where you got to with wrestling thus far, do you have any other interests outside of wrestling, like currently that, you talked about the video games, like, is that still an interest, or do you have some other interests outside of wrestling?
Video games are a pastime hobby to waste time for the most part. I do a lot of tabletop and board gaming, I've always been a Dungeons and Dragons nerd. I have no shame or no qualms about that. I've got a fair stack of board games that me and the locals will play on a fairly regular basis. So I've just done a lot of gaming in the meantime, a lot of creative writing and things like that. In probably from 2000 to about 2008, I don't know if you guys are ever familiar with e-wrestling. If you ever heard about that?
A little bit.
I ran an e-wrestling organization for 8 years that was fun, successful. It's a creative writing outlet for a lot of people, with the basis of you're a pro wrestler, you have your opponent, you write up a promo. Some people can write a really good wrestling promo, others write a 7-page, story about going to McDonald's and then cutting a promo at the end. A lot of creative people, a lot of bad people, but it was a competition. It was fun, and you just got to see how other people from around the world thought was a good promo or thought was creative and interesting at the time.
It's awesome. I also am a fan of the tabletop games. I'm a Call of Cthulhu guy myself.
Excellent.
I was gonna say, as soon as you said that, it was like the kilowatt is kindred spirits right here. pretty much like everything, video games, tabletop games, like that's. I was like, oh my gosh.
I've been trying to.
Are we best friends?
Yeah.
Did we just become friends?
I've been trying to convince the maestro here to design a tabletop wrestling role playing game? I know there are many, but
A good friend of mine, Paul Laporte, he came up with a wrestling card game that we gave a lot of input on called Book It. That went through Kickstarter. He released his first expansion. I think it just completed in November, and I think it just shipped out in April.
yeah.
So it's a cheap plug, but it's a good game. You should check it out.
I actually just got a Facebook ad for that recently.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Definitely check it out. A lot of fun. A lot of things that'll make you smile as a wrestling fan, like Jane Sienna instead of John Cena, who's just a gender bend John Cena. Simple game, super fun, and wrestling fans definitely will get the subtle nods to everybody.
Very cool. So getting into like how you got your start in wrestling, what were you doing right before you decided that you're going to jump into a career in wrestling?
So it actually starts off on a sad note. In thinking about it, so back in 2017, I lost a really really close friend of mine to complications in surgery and related to cancer that he never had treated. Jay was just one of the greatest people that you'll ever meet, but Jay lived in what we called hyper time. In 1 week, he'd watch an entire series, he would read 3 books, he'd read 7 comic books, he'd finish 5 video games, and I'm like, I barely got out of bed and changed my socks, and he's accomplished so much, and Jay would do anything, he would, go visit a friend in Connecticut on the weekend. For me, I'd be like, man, I don't want to drive 45 minutes to go do this. That's too far away. So I always had excuses for myself on why I wouldn't want to do something. Usually it was time. Usually I just wasn't motivated or ambitious enough to. Then after he passed away, I'm like, well, what would Jay do? Well, Jay would want to go to this concert that I want to go to, but I don't have anyone to go with. But what's the big deal? I'll go and I'll have fun by myself. So then I started going. Paul, who works for TIW, he was he was the play-by-play guy and the general manager. He had a personal problem with a pet, and he asked me to fill in commentary for him. My first response was, man, I don't want to drive 2.5 hours to Massachusetts. And then I just thought about it. I'm like, well, Jay would do it. And if Jay would have done it, there's no reason why I can't. It's just me being lazy. So I sucked it up. I did the drive, just like they say, do the drive. I did my first color commentary gig, and I've been there ever since. They felt I did a great job. I got to network, got to meet a lot of people. CJ Scott's an amazing person, a good friend of mine, and from there just kind of snowballed.
So what was it like kind of taking that leap into commentary after not really, I mean, you had said you had like a little bit of experience in college with some of that training, but other than that, pretty much, what was it like just kind of jumping into it?
You're nervous at first, just like anything, man, what if I'm not good? What if I don't like the sound of my voice, which I always hate the sound of my voice, but that's a me issue, not an issue for other people. But then, after the first match, I got a little bit more comfortable. And after the second match, I got more comfortable. And then I started to play off my commentary partner, Dan Peruzzi, who I've known for a while as well. And we just started building that rapport. And eventually I started finding my groove. I found my character, and things just worked out, and I've done color commentary for 2 years there, with the only break being now that we have everything on hold with this world.
Gotcha. So how did you get to know some of those guys that gave you this opportunity?
A lot of it was from TIW. I owe so much to Scott and everybody there. And just meeting the guys and girls there, they're all fantastic. They're all hard workers. They're all really humble. And I said to myself, I'm like, these are the guys I can build a foundation around. These guys would come to New York, and I know how good these guys are because I've watched them grow. I've watched a lot of these guys who debuted and where they are now. and I had faith and trust in them that they would draw a crowd once people got to know them, and they did just that. The fans definitely gravitated to everybody, and they've all done fantastic work. And from there, we've grown out, we've expanded, we've met more people. Word of mouth helps a lot. I determined from day one I wasn't going to be one of those scumbag promoters that everybody talks about, that everybody hears about, of this guy screwed me over, this guy didn't pay me money. I was going to be straight and narrow. I was going to be someone that everyone could trust. If I didn't have my integrity, I had nothing to go off of.
Yeah, that's actually very important to us as well.
Once you break that trust, then, you're never going to get it back. Mm-hmm. And word of mouth spreads. So, even if there is an issue or a misunderstanding, I'm going to do everything I can to make it right.
Absolutely.
Right. So were there any other, like you said, color commentary, were there any other kind of like jobs or other different positions that you did in wrestling before kind of going on this promoter journey?
No, that was it. That was my first foray in the business, and one of my favorites. That's where I started. So that's where my heart is. But aside from doing the creative writing thing online earlier on, that really gave me a good foundation for building stories and seeing how stories can develop in book from a different standpoint than a lot of the professionals or a lot of the old school guys had done it. I think that definitely brings a different style to the real world version of wrestling and how I look at things, where my storylines are some of the most important things. The action's fantastic, but from what I'm looking at is if the people care about what happens with wrestler A and B, then they're going to be invested in that. And from what we've seen, it's definitely drawn the attention to guys that, aren't big names, that are just, getting their teeth cut and making their story and their journey far more personal to the fans.
Absolutely. So, like, that transition from being like a sideline player in a sense to being a promoter, when you made the transition, what steps did you take, or what did you need to learn to do these things? And maybe like when it comes to licensing or stuff like that, or just anything in general that you needed to kind of self-learn to do this.
Well, New York is a nightmare to run in.
Right.
And I say to myself, I'm like, if I ever lose my current job, I just might pack up and relocate somewhere else where the regulation isn't down your throat for everything that you do. Right. I have to be licensed, which is fine. I get that. You don't want anyone coming in off the street, opening up a show, and then things going awry. Mm-hmm. The state wants someone who's going to pay their taxes and so on. I get that. But then we have to have an ambulance there. The ambulance is $125 an hour. Then we have to have a doctor. There. The doctor can be anywhere from $200 to, I've heard, up to $500 to $600 for their time there.
Wow.
Then on top of that, I need to have insurance, obviously. But during the last show back in March, we had a new commissioner, I guess to say, or someone to oversee the commission for pro wrestling takeover. And he said that 65% of the companies running in New York don't have the correct insurance. So a lot of us didn't realize that we needed medical insurance for the men and women that wrestle for us as well. Wow. So most of the companies didn't have that. There's only one company that we found that will even do that for wrestling. So that's going to be another $600 for every show, on top of the venue, the doctor, and the ambulance. New York is absolutely miserable to run in. There is no money to be made in New York, unless you're in New York City. Within small upstate New York, unfortunately I had to raise my tickets, going forward just to cover the cost of insurance. And I feel bad about it, but everybody seemed really understanding. Some of the comments were, well, you were pretty cheap to begin with, so this is fine. And I'm like, well, I should have been charging more from the start. I'd be working in the black instead of the red this entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad that you're still able to run with those regulations.
I'm gonna run until my legs fall off. So,
absolutely.
All I can really do is hope that the regulation will change sooner than later. There's a lot of companies in New York that are going to be affected by this change that we didn't know about. So it's not fun. It's not pretty, but I love wrestling. It's what you have to do for what you love.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So you were talking about all of those different obstacles that were kind of in your way as far as just not only booking one show but just kind of keep running your promotion. So as far as when you were starting and going about your first show, was there anyone in particular, or were there any people that kind of really helped you to get your first show off the ground? Because it seems like there's a lot to learn in sort of a short amount of time for being a promoter, especially with all those different sanctions in New York.
Again, CJ Scott, he was there for me for the start. He's a really good friend, and he helped me out. He gave me advice. He helped me organize things. That was such a help. Someone having experience running shows, even if you ran in a different state, he still has the knowledge that was lacking at the time. High Voltage Omar also was a huge help in getting that first show underway. During that first show, I had ordered my ring from Kansas City. The ring arrived in Buffalo that Friday, but they were unable to get it to me in New York in Utica and Whitesboro because of the hurricanes that were going on at the time.
Oh,
So for the first show, I didn't have a ring. So Junior White, who wrestled in Albany, and he has a school in Auburn, I was able to get a hold of him, and we were able to borrow his ring for that show. Anything that could have gone wrong almost did, but we were able to come together. We got the ring there on time. The boys kicked in, got the ring set up, got everything done, and we were good to go, before the crowd started to arrive. So that was a nightmare on the first show. The second show, we had the ring, we had everything good to go. Everything was set. I ordered the boards. I told the company how long I needed them. Every board was about 3 inches too long for the ring.
no.
So Kirby Wackerman, whose family is local, his dad, knock on wood, is a carpenter. he was able to get a bandsaw. We got a bandsaw down there, and right before the crowd started coming in, we had cut down all the boards to fit the ring. So there are always little unforeseen things, at least in the beginning, that we had to call an audible on. Now, however, it's been over a year. Things are slowly and surely falling into place. Everything's going a lot smoother now.
That's awesome.
But oh man, I was so mad about those boards.
Oh,
I'm like, I told you how long I needed them. They're like, well, they always run a little bit bigger. You didn't tell me that. Well, they usually want them bigger. I didn't want them bigger. I told you how big I wanted them. Oh, I was heated. I'm still heated over it now.
So, how often do you run your shows?
We do it once a month.
Okay.
Really, again, with the regulations and with all the added costs and everything, running more than once really isn't feasible.
Yeah.
I'd love to run every week. I wish I was in Canada or in a state without regulations where we can have a show every, Friday night or every Saturday or Tuesday or whenever.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun. For sure.
That'd be the dream.
So where are all because I know you're running out of your hometown, so was that where your debut show was, out of your hometown?
Yes, it was Accelerate Sports Center. As I don't know if you've experienced it, but for me, getting started trying to find a venue that would even take us was rough because everyone's like, "Oh, you want a wrestling company? Well, that's not for us. Thanks. Click buy." You know.
Yeah.
We've
Oh yeah, we
gone
know the struggle.
through at least
Yeah,
75 venues that were like, nope, 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 nope.
yep, and that's always how it is. But the guy was really cool. He's like, "Yeah, sure, we'll give it a shot. Come on down, and this is what we're going to charge you an hour." And that's what we did, and we've had no problems there. Even if we've had any issues, we've definitely resolved it, and they have been such an accommodating organization for us. Accelerate Sports Complex. It's like a giant. The best way to describe it is like a giant hangar for airplanes, but they have three basketball courts all in a row, and they give us one of the basketball courts. There's an indoor soccer field in front of all the courts, and then there's a track running around the entire upper level of the place. The place is phenomenal. So getting in here was just felt like a godsend. That hey, like this is such an amazing venue. You know, the boys and girls can shower after their matches. They don't have to, worry about using baby wipes and then driving 4 hours to get home in a stinky car. So, it's the little things like that that make it great. The other place that we've worked out of, and our next show, knock on wood, will hopefully be out of, is the Clinton Arena, which is a old hockey arena that they filmed slap shots in, I think back in the 70s.
Okay. All right.
And they used to have wrestling there, in the 70s and early 80s. Andre the Giant's wrestled there, Bob Backlund wrestled there, Fritz von Erichs wrestled there. So there's a lot of history there. And for me personally, that was the first place I ever went to a live wrestling show. So to me, I'm very partial to that place as well. So those right now are the two places that we work out of normally. But I am, like I said, looking to expand out, if not just locally, maybe out into more surrounding areas. To me, I don't even want to say it's a trust issue, but finding people that can be away from your home, that are willing to do the work, that are willing to put up the posters, to go to the local businesses, to advertise. If I have a show an hour away, I could get out there maybe once or twice before the show, but having a close connection where I can always run over someplace on my lunch or on my way home from work is definitely an advantage, and that's kind of what's keeping me grounded. But I have a great support system. There's a lot of amazing people that we've surrounded ourselves with, and I think that if we find the right location away from the Utica area, that there would be no problems. That we'd have an amazing draw there as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You also don't really hear a whole lot of like the big time wrestling coming to that kind of area, like the whole upstate New York area. It's always around the Manhattan City and stuff like that. So I think that's really cool that you're bringing wrestling out there.
Yeah.
There was a company out here a few years ago, 2CW. They had a huge following. They had, Kevin Steen, they had the Bucks, they've had Omega, they had AJ Styles, Chris Hero. They had everybody at one point or another. They had a huge fan base, but as with time, everything ends up going away or dissolving, and that's what ended up happening. So there's definitely a big void in this area, and we felt that this would be a good time to bring something here. And even though 2CW would have come here, twice a year, 3 times a year, maybe, this area has a lot of wrestling fans. When WWE comes once every 7 months or once every 7 years for a while, they'd always draw a good crowd. So for me, it was like, well, we have wrestling fans here. Let's give them what they want instead of making them wait for the E to come in and then leave with a boring, uninspired show.
So we used to have a place out here that also ran shows called the Hamburg Fieldhouse. So they used to run shows with like Andre the Giant and such like that as well. Well, I was just mentioning the Hamburg Fieldhouse, how we had kind of the arena around here that wasn't a major city, but it was like kind of out in the middle of nowhere where WWF back in the day used to actually do one of their regular tapings.
Yeah, between like that and Allentown, there was another place in Allentown. I forget what the place was called.
They would rotate every couple of weeks, come through these two areas that we were at.
They actually mentioned that on Dark Side of the Ring a few weeks ago about the Allentown and Hamburg connection with the taping that they did between the two.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've got to binge watch that show. I have not watched it yet, unfortunately.
It's such a well-known series.
Yeah,
very impressive and very sad at the end of the day, because these are people that you grew up with and that you've seen. I've seen Jimmy Snuka more than I've seen my cousins. So seeing the story of Jimmy Snuka is like, oh man, like this is rough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so sidebar on Dark Side of the Ring. Do you think Dutch Mantell or Jericho is the better narrator?
Jericho's a better narrator at the end of the day.
Okay.
Dutch Mantell will always have a place in my heart for one of the greatest in-ring moments I've ever seen. And I don't know how many people actually saw it. I don't even know what company it was from. I think maybe one of the Florida companies, where he was taking on some enhancement talent. And he gets on the mic and he says, from the looks of you, you can never be anyone a day in your life. So I'll tell you what, let's make this a 2 out of 3 falls match. And I'm going to spot you the first fall. so the guy goes to say something, and Dutch Mantell drops the microphone in front of him. So the guy leans over to pick it up, and Dutch Mantell pile drives him right there in the middle of the ring and gets the first fall. Or gets the second fall, and then he just proceeds to beat his brains in for the third fall. And I was probably, between 10 and 12 at the time, seeing it on some network station. And to me, that was the coolest thing that I've ever seen in wrestling at the time. It was so simple. It was so fantastic. And Dutch Mantell will always have a special place in my heart for that alone.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic. I'm hoping that's on YouTube somewhere that you can find it. I don't know, though.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you who he wrestled. I can't even tell you the company it was, but it was, to me, the greatest heel moment I've ever seen in my life.
Nice. So let's get into kind of like the evolution of NYCW. So first of all, where obviously, the New York roots, that's kind of where you grounded, but what made you land with the NYCW name?
I did some research at first, and I looked around, and originally I wanted to have American Classic Wrestling. I'm like, well, that seems cool. We can give it an old school style feel. We'll give it the red, white, and blue ropes. That'll open me up if I want to move around and things like that. And then I saw that there were other companies with ACW. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be, confused with another company with the same initials. So I did some research and found the NYCW wasn't in use. And I'm like, that seems like a no-brainer that this is what we should be going with. And then I just went with that. We're grounded in New York, throw championship wrestling on the end. And to me, it was a name that was too simple to pass up on.
So when you said you like giving it kind of like that old school feel, was that something you had always had in mind from the inception of like when you were going to make your promotion, it was going to be more in like the old school kind of a vein? Or I know you talked a lot about your stories. I mean, what was the kind of the main driving force that you wanted your promotion to be known for?
I wanted to be family friendly. I wanted to be a company that you could bring your kids to and not worry about what you see or what you hear. Now, obviously, I can't please everybody, and some people will say stuff, in the ring that they shouldn't. But for the most part, everybody's been really good about that. I wanted to be a company where, you can have the night out with the family and have a great time. And I started a new job recently, and some of the coworkers, I said, hey, come on down, be my guest, bring your kids and everything. And if you don't have a good time, I don't know what to tell you, because that's on you. You're going to have a good time if you come. And and the next day when I went into work, my coworker's like, you know what, you were right. If you don't have a good time, then that's on you. His son came in. He's like, this is stupid. I don't want to be here. He's like, can we go watch MMA or something like that? And he's like, just have a good time. Halfway through the first match, he's on the edge of his chair. And he's watching. He's not looking away. And he's completely enthralled by what's going on in the ring. And to me, like, that was an absolute win. I'm like, that's exactly who I want. I want someone who thinks that this is something that they're not interested in, or someone who was interested in wrestling, 20 years ago growing up, and then they're like, oh man, I fell out of it, but I really like Junkyard Dog, he was cool, or I really liked, watching Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels back in the day, and my pitch is like, come on down, have a good time, check it out. You can go to a movie for the same price, and you got a 2-hour movie. You got 4 hours of action here. And again, I guarantee you're going to have a good time. So I really wanted to get the fans back who fell out of wrestling, who became disenfranchised with, a 30-minute promo to start Raw when they just want to watch people, work at the ring.
Yeah.
So that was really my goal. I saw what I didn't like in other companies, professional and indie, and I knew what not to do, and I'm sure there's people out there like, man, your company sucks, I don't like what you do, but for the most part, I'm very happy with the product, and everyone that comes to the shows is very happy as well.
Yeah, I like that. So do you have like a specific philosophy for telling a story or storytelling when it comes to wrestling?
I am big on layers. I know a lot of people like to have, this is A, this is B, get from one point to the next. I have A to C, here's B. B may derail off from the beaten path, but is going to bring you back. In the long run, I want everything to make sense, even if it doesn't make sense in the beginning. I want there to be twists. I want there to be turns. I want there to be, people literally sitting on the edge of their seat, like his son, becoming engulfed in the action and the story. If there's not twists and cliffhangers, you have no reason to come back because you know what's going to happen. So I don't want to say I leave every show off with a cliffhanger, but I try to leave the crowd wanting more.
Yeah.
I will sometimes have the next main events challenger come out and build tension for the next match. I only have one show to tell a story before the next one, so I need to get as much information out and as much passion out to the crowd as I can.
Absolutely, yeah. That's
super important. Like I think that's super important because even if people don't realize they're drawn to that kind of thing, they are. Like a lot of people focus a lot on the in-ring stuff anymore with indies, but you can have sort of like a 3-star match, but if you tell a great story with it, people are going to think it's a 5-star match rather than having guys fly off everything and do all that kind of stuff.
I'll be the first to admit it, and I know it's not the popular decision for now. I hate Flippy Doo. I hate seeing 7 Canadian destroyers in a match. I'm like, a Canadian destroyer should finish a match. The guy or girl should not get up. That should be the end of it. Yeah. I don't want to see a Canadian destroyer then no sold, and they stand up and they exchange for 10 minutes, and I'm like, no. Like, let's have some logic behind this. This is a wrestling match. Let's do it right. And for the most part, everybody has been on the same page. There are different philosophies, and there's different flavors of ice cream for everybody. But there are so many indie companies out there that they're going to put on their show once a month, and you're just going to get your action, and people are going to be gravitated to that. To me, the action is great, the action is fine, but it's the drama, it's the story. We've had storylines that ran the course of a year. We've had multiple storylines that have run the course of a year. I feel that they are some of the cornerstone stories that we've told in NYCW, and the payoff has definitely been worth it.
Yeah, for me, the story is what I generally remember through the test of time. That's what's going to keep me coming back. So I think, that's one of the most important things, and I think we're definitely in sync with that.
And a lot of companies don't view it that way.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Exactly, where what happens one show has no bearing on the next. And for us, I had to do post-production commentary for a couple of NYCW shows, and one of those shows I looked at, I'm like, wow, this show meant nothing, because some of the storylines that started there, or some of the people that were being pushed, or it just fell apart, where either they didn't come back or there have been booking issues. And to me, I'm like, man, this was the best show that doesn't matter. And it was really disheartening, because I want to close the chapter on stories, on the books. And there's a couple of stories from that show that will never be resolved because of one thing or another. So sometimes you just got to put it behind you, and let's hope people forget about that, because we're going to give you something more important later on.
Right.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Is not necessarily dealing with like this situation in particular, but we know that you might have somebody set up in a story, and like you said, you have stories that go on for multiple months, not just kind of like a 1 month and done thing. You might have them going for a year long, multiple months, whatever it is. But how do you adapt to that then when somebody, let's say, either maybe can't, like the person who's in the story can't work your show for whatever reason, like they're injured or there's another commitment, something along those lines. Like, in your creative process, what do you do as that creative force to kind of to pivot and turn?
In some cases, we just book around it. We just won't mention it the next show, or we'll just mention it on commentary to build up for when they return the next month. If they are able to give me, a month notice, there's suspensions we've done. We've had people injured before. That is the reason why they aren't there the next month. And then we'll just, reintroduce them the next month, and they can pick up where they left off. As an example, Guy Sadlowski, who was one of our originals, one of TIW's fantastic talents, he had an angle. He lost a last man standing match, but he had physical issues that prevented him from wrestling until he got everything resolved with the doctor. So we were able to work a storyline out where he was attacked in a backstage vignette, and that took him off for 3 months until he felt physically better and he was able to return to the ring without any issues. And he came back in a triple threat match against, the guy that took him out, Damon Ravage. So the fans were shocked. They weren't expecting him to return, and he got a fantastic ovation. We continued their storyline, and they were able to move on from there. And that storyline continued for another 3 to 4 months, and ended with a Singapore cane match. So, as long as we know ahead of time, we can work around anything. It's when we have a storyline planned for someone and then they no-show, that's one of the few things I won't forgive. I mean, like, if you don't have the common courtesy and respect to let me know that you can't make it for whatever reason, then I'm done with you. So it doesn't matter what I had planned for you, you probably won't be coming back.
Yeah.
It's like the old motivational poster. It's not your aptitude, but your attitude that will determine your altitude. No. So, yes. so that's something that I've always kept in the back of my mind. You can be extremely talented, but if your attitude is shit, I don't have a need for you. We have a fantastic environment. We have a great culture in the locker room. I don't need anyone toxic there. Mm-hmm. If you're someone who has a personality that people misunderstand, that's different. But if you don't have the common respect, or your attitude is just lousy because you think who you are, there's no need for you.
Yeah, I totally have that same philosophy.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Because that roster spot can go to someone who actually wants to be there, who wants to contribute, and more times than not, it's going to pay off in the end to give that other person a chance.
For sure.
Yeah. So with that, do you normally, like, in your creative process, are you trying to like gravitate writing stories for the talent and the characters you have, or do you just kind of come up with base stories and sort of do like a plug and play and like, oh, so and so could fit here and then so and so could fit here, or do you see, okay, I have player A, B, and C, and so now I'm going to try and make a story between the three of them?
I believe in loyalty. If I'm loyal to my guys, I would like to think they're going to be loyal to me. So who I have on my roster is who I focus on. If I need somebody else, if I need a big brawler who's 300 pounds that can throw a Mack truck, if I can find one, I'll work him into the storyline, or I'll work a storyline into them. But for the most part, I look at what I have. I'm very happy with what I have. So the storylines that I write for these guys and girls. If they have an idea, I am open 24/7. I want to hear their input. My thing from the start is I am going to give them creative control of their character and what they do in the ring. I am not a pro wrestler. I probably never will be. I don't feel that I'm ever going to be in a place to tell you should do it this way or you should do it that way. The boys and girls can police themselves. They can give each other advice. I know what I want at the end of the day, and it's up to them on how they give it to me. And as a result, I think a lot of them have a lot more fun. A lot of them are a lot more invested. And if they're having fun, then the fans are having fun. If the fans are having fun, the fans are coming back.
Yeah, no, I that's another thing. I think we're just agreeing a lot. A lot of what you're saying, we agree with 100%. Like that's kind of our shared philosophy as well.
Oh yeah.
From the beginning, I have friends or local people that know that I run and everything. Like, what are you going to show up on in the ring and everything? I'm like, never. I don't need to. This isn't about me. I don't have this chip on my shoulder or this ego that, hey, this is my company and everyone listens to me and I'm the big heel owner and everything like that. And that's been done 1,000 times. The guys and girls, they can tell their own stories. And if I need to have authority figures, I have two in place. Two other people that have a chance to go out there and perform and be seen and get the fans to love them and hate them. I don't need to do that. I'm happy sitting up there now doing commentary, but just doing music, overseeing everything, and making sure that there are no issues. And that if anyone needs to talk to me, I'm readily available to take care of any issues.
Yeah, no, that's great. So obviously, with the current situation aside, and normally when we ask this question to the wrestlers, the answer is usually the same, like they want to get signed. But the question is, what is next for you, and what's next for NYCW, and what is kind of your ultimate professional goal with your promotion?
If I had a magic lamp to rub, and I got a wish, I would wish for a TV deal. I would wish that me signing to a TV company, whether it's channel 2042 on DirecTV that no one's ever going to see, the show's at 2:00 in the morning on a Thursday, or a prime time, that I can make enough money that this is how I can live, and that I can give my guys and girls contracts so they can live their dreams. I don't need $1 million. I just need enough to pay my bills, pay my rent, pay utilities, and I'll be more than happy. I'm willing to sacrifice, like I do now, just to to make this the end goal. And again, I have men and women. They have families they need to take care of. They've trained. They work hard. Their heart's in it. I would love to give them contracts and take care of them so they can do this full time. So if my end goal would be to get that TV deal and take care of the guys and girls that have been with me from the start.
My thought is, with the way that TV is progressing, it's not that far-fetched with streaming and all the different things that are happening. As long as you're in the right place at the right time and you're marketing a certain way, I think it's very possible down the road to have these things happen.
I definitely agree. I think that there are a lot of upstart TV stations that are starting up that need content, and wrestling always got that black eye for no good reason, but it draws people. Watch it.
It sure does.
Before I started my new job, I worked for a cable company, a distributor for Charter Communication, which was absolutely miserable. But people would come in and like, oh man, you're wearing a Bullet Club t-shirt. Let's talk about wrestling. Here's a flyer to my show. You should show up. And there's an older gentleman, and he was just a wrestling fan, and we talked about championship wrestling from Hollywood because if it was on TV, he would end up watching it. And again, I'm the same way. If there's wrestling on TV, I'm definitely going to watch it, and I'm going to take notes, and I'm going to enjoy it, or I'm going to dislike it, but I'm still going to watch it.
Yeah, because you see that with pretty much every fan nowadays, regardless of whether they're kind of disappointed in the main product, or they're loving the main product, or they love one federation over another. Like, they're still all watching it, and that's at the end of the day, that's what's important, is that they're all still watching it. Like, the people who might be upset with what WWE's doing right now, guess what? They're still watching it. Like it's still not something that they're just completely going away from. They're keeping with it. They're watching it. So, at the end of the day, regardless of people's opinion on it, wrestling does draw. And it draws some pretty passionate people, too.
Definitely. And wrestling is such a phenomenal entertainment outlet that, to me, people are like, oh, I don't like wrestling. I'm like, why? It doesn't make any sense. Wrestling is fantastic. If you don't like it, there's a problem with you, not with the wrestling and not with me.
Yeah.
But you'll watch, 90 Day Fiance. That's some horseshit if I've ever seen it.
I swear, God. That show gets so many plugs on this podcast.
Well, let's go back. We'll delete that. People still watch the Kardashians, and that's some horseshit.
That's phenomenal.
Oh man! So before we get into our sort of final segment here of the podcast, is there anything else about your career, about your promotion that you've really enjoyed that we haven't really talked about yet that you'd want to share?
I've really enjoyed watching the guys and girls grow, seeing where they started and where they're going, watching the development of their characters. To me, I'm big on character. Like, I grew up in the 80s, watching these larger than life characters. I'd rather see someone whose in-ring ability is limited, but they have a great character. They're able to draw emotions, or they're able to be entertaining by what they do or what creative outlet they've come up with. And to me, that makes up for the fact that you can't do a 450, because you've gotten the ring psychology down. You have the emotion, when you get kicked in the knee. The character to me is something that will make me look more towards your direction than, who you've worked with, what seminars you've done, and things like that.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much the same way. I think Maestro might also agree with me, but I think he also observes the work rate a little more than myself. But there's something about character that really either draws me or turns me away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can literally, if your character's there, you can turn me into a fan instantly.
I completely agree. You
Yeah.
know, and there are some people that I saw originally. I'm like, yeah, I'm not that impressed. But then watching their character grow and what they've come up with definitely turned me into a fan. Definitely made me think and see things differently, and it's turned out fantastic for everybody in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, it is that time for our segment on hitting the mat, and I don't have the fun sound effect thing that the Kilowatt usually does when he does it, but I'll try to do kind of like the lowbrow, cheap version of it here.
Do it.
But we're going to head into the gauntlet.
Oh man,
Cool.
I'm too fat and tired for this. All right, I'm good. Let's go.
Yeah. All it is the gauntlet is just kind of some like I call them semi-rapid fire. We call them rapid fire, but it's really not rapid fire. Like, it doesn't have to be quick. If there's something to pause on, feel free to elaborate and talk about it.
But they're casual fire.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Not friendly fire though. We don't want to
just casual fire.
Yeah. But just kind of like quick hit questions, just kind of random in order. And like I said, you can elaborate as much as you want, or you can make it as short as you want. But it's just kind of like these random questions we got that we're just going to pelt at you one by one. So, Kilowatt, you can take over because I know you've been wanting to ask this particular question the whole time.
Well, I'm going to go with our typical first one first. Typically, we ask wrestlers, like, what names have they worked? Have you, as a promoter, worked with names? Have you brought in any names at all, or?
The only name that we've really brought in, well, the biggest name I'd have to say is Brutal Bob Evans, Uncle Bob. Everybody knows Bob. Everybody loves Bob. I've reached out to some other bigger names, but things just didn't work out. I reached out to Adam Rose in the beginning. Was a big Adam Rose fan. I see him now. I'm kind of glad that I didn't go through with that one.
Unrecognizable.
No disrespect. A completely different human being. The Ugly Ducklings from North Carolina. I know they're definitely going to be on a major brand TV sometime soon. Absolutely. So I'm glad I was able to get them in on the ground floor. Former NYCW Tag Team Champions, I might add. Right now, I think those are really the big. Oh, I'm sorry, and HC Loke from ECW, WWF's first ever intergender match. Ring of Honor, former tag team champion.
Right.
He's out of Rochester, so he was able to come down for as a last second replacement, actually. So he was fantastic as well.
Nice. All right. So I personally know some of the talent that you use, and I think we actually are scheduled to use some of the talent that you use. So I have a list here of some of the talent that I'm aware of that work for you. If you just kind of like give me a little, like, how did you come across them, and maybe like your thoughts and some of the interesting ideas you've had for them, or whatever.
Definitely.
So first, the guy who actually introduced us, Johnny Moran.
Johnny is fantastic. I think Johnny is a consummate professional. He was referred to me by Mike Skyros, and from the moment I met Johnny Moran, I realized that he would one day be the face of my company, and that came to light back in December, and I've been thrilled with everything that he's done, with everything he's brought, and again, he's another name that I think people are going to learn about, and I definitely see that he has an amazing future outside of NYCW on a bigger stage.
That I've noticed, Tunku and Devantes.
Yep, they are both fantastic. Again, the sky is the limit for all of these guys. Tunku Amir came in just just told me he was going to come up. We found a match for him, and from there we found a storyline for him on the spot. Yeah. Same thing with Devontis, and the Moran gang got formed. They're both super talented. They were both super fun, completely respectful. Mm-hmm. The Chikara system is amazing. Not only had we had them before, but we also had Fry Nasser, who was the first Chikara student that we had come up. Mm-hmm. And they're all fantastic. They all show up. They start setting up. They start helping out. No questions asked. And that's what I want. I want guys that don't think they're too good. And to me, if you graduate from the Chikara school, you've got the Chikara factory. You've got a pedigree. Yes. So there's definitely a lot of people that can come and be like, well, I graduated from here, so I'm too good to do that. But none of them have ever been like that. And to me, that speaks volumes for what Quackenbush has done, and just for the work ethic of the men and women that come from there.
Phenomenal. I mean, this is a Tunku Amir. I've known him for probably a year and a half, 2 years now, and that's like his MO. Show up, help out, no expectation. But if you give him the chance, I mean, you're going to fall in love with the kid.
Yeah, and he was absolutely fantastic, and he was able to generate heat. He's one of those guys that does everything that I want to see in the ring. He's not only has an amazing work rate, he also has a fantastic character. Mm-hmm. It's great to see him there.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it. He recently took part in a Maestro, what was it called? The Impact
the Impact House? Yeah, the gut check. Impact gut check, yeah.
The words that Johnny Bravo had about Tunku Amir, I personally was offended. Because...
I didn't see it. I'll go back and watch it, though. But I did realize he was part of it.
Yeah, there's a clip on YouTube that specifically stuck out because there's like 7 guys, and of the 7 guys, they put 6 of them in a 6-man tag match, and the one that was left out was Tunku, and the reason that he gave for it, it was basically some bullshit reason that I was like, if you've actually seen this guy work and you've seen him do whatever, like that would not be why he would be excluded from this.
Yeah, it's Johnny Bravo. That's all I have to say about that.
It's unfortunate, but that's their loss.
Yeah.
Again, Tunku has unlimitless potential, mm-hmm. and they're missing out on it.
I totally agree. So you mentioned Mike Skyros. He's a good guy. I mean, how'd you come across him?
Well, Mike Scaros is one of the 2CW guys, so he's from Syracuse. He's trained with Zachary Springate III in ISIS Effects, and he was a local guy, kind of local guy. One of our sponsors, 16 Stone Brew Pub, mm-hmm. Adam Stone was before I decided I was going to open up the company. It was literally about a week before that he decided he was going to start going to wrestling school. So it just seemed to collate together that, hey, he's going to go to the wrestling school. I was going to open up the company, and I have a friend who can work for me. So in going to the school, he met Mike Skyros, Jacoby Riddick, Kevin Cartwright, and to me, I'm like, it's a no-brainer. They're local guys. I need to support local if I want local to support me. So I was more than happy to bring them in. And Mike Skyros is fantastic. He has the drive to make this. He doesn't have a plan B, and sometimes not having a plan B is the best way to go about it because you can't fail. He's going to make it one way or another, by hook or by crook.
Absolutely. So there's a company in PA that we are also fans of, good friends with the promoter Tate. We enjoy his stuff, and Riley Shepard is currently their champion, and she's worked for you as well.
Yes, Riley is fantastic. She was our first women's champion. I am so happy that she's back. I'm so happy she's at 100%. She again comes from an amazing program with Damian Adams,
Yes.
and that's another school that just produces talent and fantastic, just fantastic human beings at the end of the day. We putting their in-ring ability aside, there's no one I've met from there that I'm like, man, they've got a chip on their shoulder and they think they're too good. They're all humble. They're all fantastic in-ring and out of ring. And, Riley again she's going to make it, much like Johnny Moran. And I did a local, interview in the for the local paper,
Yes.
and they were two of the names that they came to mind when being interviewed. I'm like, I can see both of them on TV. They both have it. They both have a look. They both have in-ring ability. They both have charisma. They both have mic skills. The only thing that can hold them back would be themselves.
Absolutely. So, thinking about Damian Adams and the wonders that he produces, Corinne Mink.
Corinne is fantastic. I love Corinne. Our second women's champion. Just gonna run the gambit.
Yeah.
She's super fun to have around. Seeing her on Dragnificent was fantastic.
Yes.
I loved every second of it.
Absolutely.
Same thing with Javier. Team Espana is fantastic. Her and Javier together are just that's a couple goal that very few people can achieve. And again, I loved having her around. We haven't had her back in a while only because of scheduling conflicts and now with COVID and everything. But we were planning on having an all-women's show next month, and I had reached out to her for that, but unfortunately things have fallen apart. So that show is on hold indefinitely. Maybe again in the fall we're going to try to do it. But I can't wait to see Corinne again.
I like that you said that you were looking to do an all-women's show. Do you have any specific philosophy for women's wrestling, or
go out there and perform? Go out there and show the guys that you're not the early 2000s Braun Patty's match, and you're not the filler match. Times have changed. 100%. And there's the whole women's revolution, but that's all still fluff at the end of the day for marketing. I think that any of these women that we have on our show are absolutely fantastic, and there's no need to limit them or to hinder them. Go out there, perform, show the guys that you're not a special attraction, that you're part of the show, and that's how I treat them. Personally, for my own personal opinion, I was never a big fan of intergender, but slowly starting to grow on me. Slowly starting to accept it. I'm slowly opening up my mind to it. And Riley and Corinne and Kristen DeVille and PJ, they've all performed so well for me that it's growing on me. And
I think if there's a way to do intergender where it's not gimmicky, I think it'd be phenomenal.
Yes, I completely agree. The time that intergender wrestling to me really I was the most interested in was Lucha Underground.
Yes.
Only because I saw Lucha Underground as not being, I saw it as being a comic book. Yeah. So, Wonder Woman throwing down with Killer Croc, that makes sense. I'm for it. And that's how Lucha Underground was portrayed. And when you have a company that tries to portray wrestling as a competitive sport and everything, it blurs that line between, the fantasy that Lucha Underground gave you to, imagine Ronda Rousey versus, Donald Cerrone at the same weight class and what would end up happening.
Right.
So, but Riley has told me that she will make me a fan of intergender wrestling, and she is slowly starting to convert me.
Alrighty. So I've got just a few more names here. Garrett Holiday.
Garrett is a fellow Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so me and Garrett clicked right off the bat. I think that his work rate is absolutely phenomenal. I haven't seen a bad Garrett Holiday match yet.
All right, Nick Sullivan.
I love Nick. Nick is the nicest human being on the planet who can rip your arms off and beat you to death with them. We definitely plan on doing a lot more with Nick Sullivan in the future, as long as the schedules all align. But yeah, he's kind of local. He's out the Syracuse way. So to me, it's important to bring him in because this is his home. New York is his home. So traveling to Canada, Massachusetts, Ohio, Pennsylvania, that's an unfortunate fact for a lot of these guys that want to work, that they have to go so far away because the regulations in New York stink.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So we've already talked a little about the Ugly Ducklings. How did they pop up on your radar?
The stepdads. The stepdads are like, hey, there's this tag team called the Ugly Ducklings. They have an opening on Saturday. You should bring them in because they're amazing. And I'm like, all right, let me check them out. And then I'm like, oh, well, Colby Carino is part of it. I just know who Colby is. Big fan of Steve Carino. And then seeing that they evolved from Colby and just talking to Rob Killjoy, just a fantastic group of guys, so entertaining. And the crowd here fell in love with him. They didn't know how to take them at first, when you first see them. But the crowd here definitely loves the gimmicks like I do, and they fell in love with the Ducklings, and the Ducklings have put on some amazing matches. They put on a match of the year, our match of the year for 2019 with the Stepdads, and it was so much fun. Corinne was sitting next to me, and she's like, I've never seen the Stepdads go for 20 minutes. They've never gone that long in their lives.
Wow.
So, just good spirits, good dudes, and it makes me happy. And I smile just thinking about, how much of a positive influence that like the Ugly Ducklings can bring to a locker room, because they come out there, they're happy to be in the ring, they're going to put on a killer show. We've had Lance has showed up injured. Mikey's had to replace him a couple of times, but it doesn't matter because they can all put on such a fantastic performance, and the crowd will eat them up if they don't know who they are.
So you said that you and Corinne were watching the match, and now this has me interested. Where are you as your show's going on, and what are you doing?
So, like I said, with the way that the place is set up, is they have a race track around the second level. So it goes past the basketball courts and the soccer field and everything. So we set up the announcing table and the sound table and the hard cam up on the second level. So we have a nice bird's eye view of the ring, which to me is unique because a lot of companies will just give you that straight ahead hard cam. Well, now we have a nice angle that catches everything. So I set up the sound table up there, and the guys and girls will come up. They can sit down. They'll sit on the track in front of the fence, watch from the second level, and just enjoy the show like everybody else. If you ever look at some of the footage, whenever you get to the roaming cam, you'll see the second level and people watching and enjoying from there.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I know both of Meister and I have a theater background, so I know with kind of being the coach or the director, I'm always interested in where somebody's peeking out at, or where they're tweaking things or calling audibles, and where they're at during the performance itself.
Yeah, we're kind of up in the above everybody, calling audibles from there. I guess it may take away a bit of the illusion when you see two people that may have wrestled 20 minutes ago, kind of in the same vicinity, watching and enjoying the action, but at the same time, it's a different experience and vibe up there.
Yeah. All right. So the last two guys I have here are John West and High Voltage Omar.
John West, again, super phenomenal talent. Was introduced to me by Johnny Moran, obviously, and he came up with the idea to bring John West in and form, a Triple H HBK style duo between them, and I was more than okay with that. And again, John West he's so slick and smooth in the ring that it's criminally underrated how good he is.
Yes.
And I don't think a lot of people really pick up on the subtle nuances that he does that set him apart from everybody else. High Voltage Omar, he was my flagship. When I looked at the roster, there were a few people I had in mind. I discussed with some of my inner circle about who to do, who to put the belt on, who to make the flagship. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's got to be Omar. He's such a fantastic worker. Great to have around. Another very, very good locker room leader. And watching the progression of his career in NYCW, starting off as a heel, the crowd definitely hating him, not caring what the crowd thinks, to right up until his retirement, 3 months before, 4 months before even really, hearing the crowd start chanting for HVO. And I'm like, he's hitting Brute in the head with a pair of handcuffs. Why are you cheering him? He's ducking out of the ring and being a heel tactics. Why are you cheering him? You should be booing him. But at the end of the day, his work rate is so fantastic, and his charisma and the way that he carries himself in and out of the ring, the crowd had no choice. They had to accept him. They had to embrace him. And as a result, he went from being someone who was probably the biggest heel in the company to our top face. And it all happened organically. And I think the fact that we were able to make a lot of the storylines and heel and face turns organic speaks volume. We're not forcing someone down your throat that you don't like. We're not telling you need to cheer for this guy because this is we're investing all our money in. The crowd decided that High Voltage Omar was their guy, that he was the one they wanted to cheer for. And as a result, he got an amazing pop. He got an amazing reaction as a face.
That's awesome. That is phenomenal.
So speaking of work rate, what do you think, in your opinion, was the best match as far as work rate goes that has happened in your promotion?
The best match. That's what I'm going to need to think about. I've had a lot of matches so far. One of the ones that will always stand out for me will be the Street Elite Trilogy Cross versus the Stepdads early last year. I think they had been the third or fourth show. It was such a fantastic matchup between the two teams that it was a runner-up for one of the matches of the year. But at the same time, I think it was one of the iconic cornerstone matches that helped establish what NYCW would be. The Street are an amazing tag team. We're an amazing tag team. I think that Terrell's taken time away, and Angel's been working singles for us. And the Stepdads are just such a fun tag team that the crowd fell in love with them. The crowd was completely engaged with both teams that they liked, and it paid off in the end. Great match, good clean ending. Just one of those matches that I would put on our highlight reel when I end up sending it out to those cable companies.
Oh, for sure. So now, kind of switching gears, as far as like when you've booked a storyline or angle or even just a match, what was probably the one that was the most fun, either for you to book yourself, like the angle storyline, or maybe the one to watch, the most fun to watch come to life?
So one of the ones that to me was fun because I had never seen it before and led to Okay, so I guess it's going to be a two-parter. So it was Omar versus Brute Van Slyke. The match ended in a double knockout. So uh, Brute picked Omar up for a power bomb, took the handcuffs to the forehead, knocking him out, and he power bombs Omar almost through the ring. The referee counts to 10 because neither man stood. Never seen that in wrestling before. I'm like, that'd be a nice twist. Let's see what happens. And the crowd was stunned silent. Like, no one knew what to expect because no one's ever seen that before. And some people may have grumbled, and no one was happy because no one wants a no finish, but that's how the match ended. So to me, when I talk to my graphic design guy, his thing is always never send the fans always send the fans home happy. That's what WWE does right every time. So to me, I'm like, well, how do I send the fans home happy after that? So over the course of the year, Dante Dio and Scotty Arrow had been feuding. They had their hands on each other every month. I had everyone come out, help Omar and Brute to the back. And as that happened, Scotty attacks Dante from behind because Scotty Arrow's a dick. So as that's going on, we have the liaison say, hey, I'm tired of this. You two are putting each other's throats for a year. It ends tonight. You're putting the Empire State Heritage title on the line, Scotty. This is your last time meeting each other. I never want you guys to meet up in the middle of the ring again. So Scotty, thinking that he has the advantage now that he's attacked him, turns around and he takes basically a code breaker off the top rope, and Dante gets a pin in an impromptu sudden match. The entire place pops so loud that Dante, who is, one of the heart and souls of our faces, just finally overcame this hated heel who was held on to his title by hook or by crook, walking out, cheating, doing whatever he has to, and has now become the champion. It completely redeemed the shocking ending of two heavyweights knocking each other out into a title change that no one was even expecting that show. So that payoff, those two payoffs immediately after each other, I think really solidified it for me as being one of the great storylines of ending a storyline and taking the other one to the next level. It should have taken it to the next level, but Brood ended up having medical issues and had to take time away. But nevertheless, it still led to a great moment that, I won't forget.
No, and that's a great demonstration when you were talking earlier about like layers, coming up with layers in a story. Like you actually thought of, okay, I know this ending might kind of piss some people off if it just ends this way. So what can I do to kind of, curb that in a way? And you come out with a whole different sort of story that brings everything together and puts it in a couple different directions. So, I mean, that's some like super, you really don't see a whole lot of that kind of creativity, especially like indie wrestling.
And like I said before, I think that's what sets us apart. It may not be everyone's flavor ice cream, but for those of you that do care about storylines and that do want to see progression from start to finish, they're the ones I'm catering to. They're the ones that are going to get the most out of these shows by showing up every month and seeing where the men and women end up.
Now, when you were talking about that, this is going to be kind of like a sidebar because that was super interesting to me. So when you kind of booked that whole storyline, obviously you had that whole ending shaped out. But did you kind of call that spot where did you just say, okay, we're going to end it in a double knockout? You figure that out, or did you give them that particular double knockout?
I let them figure that out. Like I said before, I'm not a wrestler. From my limited understanding, I could probably put a match together, but I probably shouldn't. They're both experienced. They both knew part A and part B and everything in between, they were able to figure out. So that was their ending that they had come up with. And in watching it in hindsight, that power bomb was disgusting. Like that ring shook, and it kind of made sense. Like, no, he shouldn't be getting up after that. That was, a Vader-esque back-breaking power bomb, and the handcuffs to the head. That match wasn't long. It may have only been like 5 or 6 minutes, but it was a car crash. They battered each other, so it would make sense that, when they're both going, 90 miles an hour at each other, that when they finally crash, that there's no getting up from that. And I think that nowadays you see someone take a Canadian destroyer off a ladder through a table and still wrestle for 10 minutes, that you're expecting nothing to stop these guys. Well, let's make this a little bit realistic. Your body's going to give up at some point, and that's the story that they told.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that, because at the end of the day, even though we know they're not actually punching and kicking each other, like, at the end of the day, it's a fight, so you have to make it at least kind of logistically look like a fight, not just kind of like, okay, I'm going to climb up here, do this now because, I feel like it. It's like, no, you're in a fight. Would you do that in a fight? Not necessarily. Well, then why are you doing it?
Exactly. And when I see that, it drives me crazy. Like, Joey Janela, why are you turning your back immediately on Cody Rhodes after you forearmed him?
Yeah.
like drove me crazy. I want the matches to make sense. I want the storylines to make sense. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of the guys and girls want the exact same thing, and they've done it that way.
Right. So kind of moving to that spectrum of things, we normally ask this question in reverse, because normally we ask, what is the best and worst quality in a promoter from a wrestler's perspective? So now flip the tables. Asking a promoter, what is the best and worst quality in a wrestler?
The best quality is humility. I gravitate more to people that are humble and confident in their ability and what they do. That's Omar, I think, is one of the perfect examples for that. If you talk to him, he's a very humble guy, but he's been doing this long enough, and the second that his music hits, that switch is flipped, and you have this confident heel or face, whatever you want him to work, and you won't be disappointed. The worst quality is ego. There's more than a few people that, rub me the wrong way. And maybe that's on me. Maybe I took something wrong, but at the same time, I'm the promoter. I'm the one handing out the money, and I'm the one asking you to come back. So, getting lippy with me for no reason, or, thinking that you're too good to do something is a very easy way to not come back. And for some people, they have enough bookings. It's not that big of a deal to them. Other people, I'm like, hey, I don't see you have that many shows coming up, so maybe you should have, curb your ego, check your ego at the door, like they say.
Yeah. Sure. So, what do you think of all the shows that you've run so far? What was something? Because I know this, because you're not really out in front of the audience, so this not necessarily would happen to you. It could be something that happened in a show. But what do you think was kind of like one of the most embarrassing moments so far that may have happened at a show, that maybe something went unplanned? It could be on your end, or it could be something in the ring as far as unplanned stuff.
So the system that I had, the sound system that I had, that I usually worked, I was using Bluetooth, running that between my laptop and the PA, and for whatever reason, the Bluetooth on it just stopped really working. So on 2 different occasions, a few months apart, the Bluetooth just gave out. So that, to me, on my end, was pretty embarrassing. However, to make the best out of a awful situation, it cut out for Killer Instinct, Mike Skyros, and Kevin Cartwright. And the crowd instead started to sing Carry On My Wayward Son. So they sang them to the ring as I'm trying to reboot my laptop and get everything to work. That was pretty obnoxious. The other one was, again, the same thing. I went to go play someone's music. The audio cut out. Try rebooting the computer. Try rebooting the PA, and it just didn't work. So it was our season's beating show, which should be up soon. And this part gets edited out, unfortunately. Fortunately, but unfortunately. And Kennedy Copeland was up there with me, and our ring announcer's like trying to solve for time. He's like, "Does anyone want to sing a Christmas carol?" And she raises her hand. She's like, I'll do it. So she runs down and she uses her cell phone and she puts her cell phone up to the microphone and she starts playing My Chemical Romance's cover of some Christmas song. And it bought me enough time to get everything up and running again and to go from there. So those to me were my two most embarrassing moments because the audio was something that I was responsible for, and for whatever reason the Bluetooth gave way, and then the other time, again, the Bluetooth gave way. I've resolved that issue by just hardlining everything from the laptop to the PA, so hopefully I'll never have that issue again. But those were two moments like, oh man, come on, you're kidding me, right?
I mean, so Kennedy Copeland, like, really has a pretty good following going, and you know, I've been kind of following her for a while, but I'll tell you, that story leads to like her personality, which totally puts her over to me.
Yes, a great human being. So and her and Ben are fantastic. Ben from MSP. You know, if there are two people that they can definitely complement each other and they definitely bring a fantastic aura once they're together, it's definitely those two.
So what do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned so far as a promoter?
Oh, the biggest lesson I've learned as a promoter. You know, I think I probably learned it before being a promoter, but I've carried it over, is to not worry about my ego. My ego doesn't matter. I personally, in my viewpoint, don't matter. Everything will go on without me. This world will continue to turn if I stop, living tomorrow. So let's try to give it to everyone else. Let's make everything special for the guys, the girls, and the crowd. They're the ones that I want to have memories. Good memories of the event, of the matches, of the time that they worked this person, the time they were able to cut a promo in front of the crowd and the crowd reacted this way. The memories aren't just for the fans, it's also for the boys and girls. They're out there, they're putting their lives on the line, they're risking their health. They should have amazing memories, amazing matches that they can go back on and talk about in podcasts or to their families or over the holidays or anything like that.
So, are you strictly like a behind the scenes promoter, or do you have like a storyline role at all?
I'm behind the scenes. I decided from day one that I didn't want to be out there. No one wants to see me. I'm not pretty. I'm a fat, old, ugly guy at this point. So I don't need to be out there. There are times that I wish I was, because I'm like, oh man, this person screwed up. Oh man, they worded that wrong. I could have done that right. But at the same time, if people stumble a little bit, that's fine. They'll get their footing. And getting other people involved means that someone else has an opportunity to live a dream or to have another experience. Cassandra Powers, who's our original liaison to the front office, she is the middleman between management, who I guess would be me, and the talent. She doesn't have a wrestling background, but she does have a little bit of an acting background, and she stumbles sometimes. the idea of a Christmas street fight is kind of foreign to her. So she said we're going to have a Christmas fight, and everyone like, what's a Christmas fight or a Christmas street? So it's little things like that. But at the same time, I think people kind of gravitate towards that because, again, it's organic, it's real. She's not being hand-fed these lines. She's just given a rough outline of, hey, say this and get this across, and just going from there. And, everyone's stumbled. Everyone's tripped up on their words. So people relate to that at the end of the day.
So was there a particular event that meant the most to you? Like, of all the shows you have run so far, was there any particular event that stands out to you and that like really means the most, that has maybe like a sentimental place for you?
I think the first show will always be the most sentimental, so I'll just take that one out of the equation. Because the first show just shows that all your hard work paid off. If aside from that show, just trying to think for a moment quickly over all the shows. I'm going to say my last show in March, and the reason why is because we've made it another year, and this last show I think is better than the show before that, and I think that show is better than the show before that, and I think that we've continuously gotten better, and the storylines have become more cohesive and interwoven between the various characters. I think with the last show, it didn't end on a happy ending, but it definitely landed on a cliffhanger, leading on to whenever our next show will be. Hopefully, I think July 11th or 13th. I'm hoping it's going to lead into that show, and I have a strong feeling that as long as we are able to keep our momentum, that my favorite show is always going to be the last show, because it's better than the one before that.
It's just like a foundational sort of like entertainment perspective too. Like, if your product continuously gets better, that means you have a solid foundation underneath that everybody's working from, that just keeps growing next level, next level, next level. So, I mean, that's a great mentality to take with that.
And it feels complete, that show was great. Let's shoot better next time. And when we finally plateau out, then I'll be worried. But until then, as long as we can get a little improvement every show, I don't see anything stopping us besides the athletic commission.
Yeah, with all their sanctions. Hopefully they don't put any more sanctions down now with all the COVID and everything. But
I hope not.
So this might be a difficult question, because it seems like you have a very extensive knowledge of wrestling, so it might be hard to narrow this down. But who would you say is on your wrestling Mount Rushmore?
I've considered this before many times, and I think it always changes. I guess I'll go with my personal Mount Rushmore, as opposed to an overall Mount Rushmore. And things have obviously changed over the years, but Savage, Ric Flair, Triple H, and John Cena. Now, I may not be a huge fan of some of those names, but what they've done for the business, good or bad in some cases, definitely influence a lot of the ways that I look at things and realize how things should be done.
Yeah, sometimes you can't deny the impact that guys have made, whether you agree with it or not.
Exactly. Triple H gets a lot of bad publicity for burying people or playing the political game or anything, but Triple H, I don't know if you've ever seen the Wrestling Isn't Wrestling video by John Landis.
Mm-mm.
is go on YouTube. It's a 20-minute video by John Landis. Landis is the last name. His father was a famous director. He's a director. It's a satirical look at the career of Triple H, but it's done absolutely amazing. I will send you the link, and it's something that if you watch it, you will appreciate the character of Triple H even more than you did before. And if you didn't, you will see it in a completely different light and absolutely accept it.
That's interesting. So, all right, you've made it to the end. Here's the final question.
All right, 42.
Yes. Oh.
That's
sweet.
But fantastic. Fantastic. So let's say, if or when there is a point that you decide to retire or, kind of hang up what you're doing, looking back on your life and your career, what do you want your legacy to have been?
That I was able to entertain people during their lowest points. I know everyone's had high and low points in their life, and wrestling to me was always there for me. Hopefully, I've given men, women, children a good Saturday night, that they got their money's worth, that they forgot about their problems, and memories that they can pass on to their kids or grandkids about this awesome night that they saw, Omar's twin come into the ring and cost Fox Veneer the heavyweight title, or the night that Dante Dio won the Empire State Heritage title, or the night that the Ugly Ducklings and the Stepdads won 30 minutes. If my legacy can be I brought happiness to people, then I've done my job.
Well, that's fantastic. So that's it. You made it to the end of the gauntlet.
Oof.
So your reward for make it to the end of the gauntlet is now you have free reign to plug anything and anything you want. So give us all of your social media where you can find NYCW, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. So Facebook, just New York Championship Wrestling. If you search that on any of the social medias, that Twitter, I just started learning to use Instagram because like I said, I'm old and technology is starting to pass me by. Now getting the hang of it. So I'm doing some Twitter updates or Instagram updates at work. If you search on YouTube, New York Championship Wrestling, we're caught up almost to the December show. We just did some post-production commentary this weekend, so hopefully that will be up within the next week, and then we should be able to knock out the rest of our videos there. I do the videos a little bit differently. I do it in a episodic format where the first half of the show is show 1, the second half of the show is show 2, so you can view all of those on YouTube. I guess I'll give another quick plug out to my friend Paul's board game. It's called Book It, the wrestling promoter game. Again, you can find that on Facebook and on Twitter. There are some reviews of that on YouTube as well from various game review sites. Anything else I want to plug quick while I'm at it? I Truly Independent Wrestling in Massachusetts. You can check me out doing commentary there. It is definitely a different version of me that you'll hear. You're free to hold that against me. I won't lose any sleep. I invoke my inner Bobby Heenan. Another fantastic company that people should have eyes on. And man, and I think that's it. 16 Stone Brew Pub, one of my sponsors, MNO Bar, another one of my sponsors, Cloud Giant, which is a gaming store in New Hartford, New York, another sponsor. And I think I'm good. I think I covered everybody. If I missed somebody, I'm sorry.
That's all good. Well, thank you so much for being on here, Kilowatt. You want to take it away? Give our plugs out there.
First, I don't know about you, Maestro, but I'm thinking maybe once this COVID stuff is over, I think we need to try this Book It game out. And maybe
for sure. I'm going, literally, once we're done here, I'm going to go online and kind of look it up, see what it's all about. Because I've seen the Facebook ad also, and I was like, huh.
Yeah, we'll have to give it a little review. So, all right, I'll kick it off. You can find us, the HTW Podcast Network, on pretty much anywhere that great podcasts are found. You can check us out at High Tension HTW for our awesome wrestling company that has yet to actually run a show. Thank you, COVID. So at High Tension HTW on all social media. You can find me at Real Kilowatt, again, on all social media, and the Maestro.
You can find me at Maestro A. Scott on all social media platforms.
Right on. So thank you again for joining us. This has been Hitting the Mat, the podcast, with the promoter of NYCW, Johnny Baptist.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. It was such a good time.
Thank you.